Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're heading way back, over 2,000 years, actually. We're digging into Sun Tzu's The Art of War. And trust me, this isn't just some dusty old military book. It's still shaping how people think about strategy today. Leaders, thinkers, even like sports coaches. So for this deep dive, we looked at Lionel Giles's 1910 translation, a classic, and also a broader overview, just to really pull out the core ideas for you.
Yeah, and our goal here isn't just military history. It's about finding those bits of wisdom, the really timeless stuff that works anywhere, anytime. We want to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding why this text is still so relevant, maybe even in your own life.
Okay, so let's start with just how big a deal this book is. It's staggering, really. It's the oldest known military text in the world. We're talking roughly 5th century BC, attributed to Master Sun Tzu.
It's pretty incredible. And, the history around who actually wrote it is fascinating, too. For ages, people argued, was it Sun Wu or maybe his descendant Sun Bin? But then in 1972, they found these amazing bamboo slips, the Yinkashan Han slips.
Ah, yeah, I read about those. They clarified things.
Big time. They showed there were actually 2 texts, the Sun-Tzu we're talking about, and a later one by Sun Bin building on it. So our Sun-Tzu dates way back somewhere between 500 and 430 BC. It suggests it wasn't just one guy writing in isolation, but more like a whole school of thought developing over time under that name. A living tradition.
A living tradition. I like that. That makes sense of its huge influence shaping military thought everywhere, East and West. Can you give us some, concrete examples of that military impact?
Oh, absolutely. The list is long. Think way back to feudal Japan, the Sengoku period. There's this famous warlord, Takeda Shingen.
Right.
He apparently used the art of war for his battle standard, the Furinkazen. Fast as wind, silent as forest, ferocious as fire, immovable as mountain. Straight from the text.
Wow.
Then fast forward, Mao Zedong's ideas on guerrilla warfare, deeply influenced by Sun Tzu. General Giap in Vietnam, the guy who won at Dien Bien Phu, he studied it closely.
So major 20th century conflicts, too.
Definitely. And even in the West, U.S. generals like MacArthur, Colin Powell, they knew it. It's still taught at places like West Point, Sandhurst. There were even reports that the KGB studied his chapters on deception really carefully during the Cold War.
That's quite a reach, from ancient China to Cold War espionage. But what really gets me is how it pops up outside the military. That seems even more surprising. Where have you seen it applied, unexpectedly?
That's where you see how universal it is. Business is a huge one. Lots of Japanese executives swear by it for corporate strategy.
Yeah.
I remember this story, maybe apocryphal, maybe not, about a tech startup using that avoid strong, strike weak idea. They didn't challenge the big guys head on, but found a niche, quietly built up market share.
Smart. Like guerrilla tactics for business.
Kind of, yeah. And lawyers use it too. Negotiation, trial strategy, understanding the other side's weaknesses, controlling the story. Sports coaches too. Bill Belichick in the NFL is apparently a fan. Luis Felipe Scolari, the Brazilian football coach, supposedly slipped quotes under his players' doors during the 2002 World Cup, which they won, by the way.
Maybe it worked.
Who knows? Even esports players use the ideas. Feigning weakness, controlling the game's flow.
Yeah.
And, pop culture, Wall Street, The Sopranos, you name it.
It really shows these aren't just rules for fighting, are they? They're more like fundamental principles for dealing with any kind of competition or complexity. Understanding the game. So if we want to understand that game, where does Sun Tzu say we should start? What's step 1 in strategic planning before you even make a move?
Well, he starts by saying war is incredibly serious, of vital importance to the state, life and death stuff. Then he lays out these 5 constant factors you absolutely have to think about. First, the moral law. This is all about whether the people are truly behind their leader, ready to follow them no matter what.
Yeah.
Unity.
Okay, unity. Makes sense.
Second, heaven. This isn't mystical. It means understanding the big picture conditions, night and day, hot and cold, seasons, timing, the climate you're operating in.
Right, the context.
Third, earth, the actual physical environment. Distances, danger, safe spots, open ground, narrow passes, all that.
The literal lay of the land.
Fourth, the commander. The leader needs virtues, right? Wisdom, sincerity, kindness, courage, strictness.
The quality of leadership itself.
And fifth, method and discipline. This is the practical stuff. Organization, ranks, supply lines, managing the money, the structure.
Wow, okay. That's a lot to cover before you even think about fighting. How does this translate today? I mean, if a business leader today ignores, say, moral law, that unity piece, what happens?
Great question. because it shows how relevant it is. If you ignore that moral law, or maybe your company's values, or employee trust, you might make a decision that looks good on a spreadsheet. But if your team doesn't buy in, if they feel alienated, morale tanks. People stop trying. Your strategy fails because the people aren't willing to execute it. Just like an army that loses its will.
So it's a whole system. You need all 5.
Exactly. And he builds on this with 7 considerations for predicting who will win. You compare both sides on these factors. Who has the stronger moral law? Better general. Better use of heaven and earth. Stronger discipline. Better troops. Better training. Clearer rewards and punishments. His bottom line is blunt. He who knows them will be victorious. He who knows them not will fail. It demands, a really thorough, honest look at everything.
And then he hits us with maybe his most famous line, all warfare is based on deception. Why is being deceitful so central for him? Seems a bit dark.
It can sound that way, but it's more about efficiency, really. About winning smartly, not just through brute force. If you can make your enemy think you're weak when you're strong, or far away when you're right there, you gain a massive advantage. You make them miscalculate. You control their perception, and so you control their actions.
So it's less about lying for the sake of it, more about strategic misdirection.
Precisely. Think about poker. You don't show your hand, right? You might bluff. It's about managing information and psychology to gain an edge without necessarily having a costly fight.
Okay, that makes more sense. It feeds back into his other point. Many calculations lead to victory, and few calculations to defeat. Preparation, preparation, preparation. Even calculating how you appear. And speaking of calculations, he's incredibly blunt about the cost of conflict, isn't he? Chapter 2, Waging War. It's not glorious, it's expensive.
Oh, absolutely sobering. He puts numbers on it. Raising a big army costs 1,000 ounces of silver per day. That's huge. But it's not just the silver. He talks about the knock-on effects of long campaigns. Weapons get dull, enthusiasm fades, troops get exhausted, the treasury runs dry.
And that weakness creates an opportunity for others.
Exactly. He warns that while you're bogged down and drained, other rivals might see their chance to strike. It's a very strong argument for getting things done quickly and decisively.
He really hammers this point home. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. That feels controversial. Sometimes people talk about strategic patience, right? Grinding the enemy down.
It does seem counter to that idea, yeah. But I think he's less against patience and more against inefficiency. He hates seeing resources squandered in long, drawn-out conflicts that bleed a state dry. His profitable way is about smart logistics. Forage on the enemy, he says. Live off their land. He even gives a ratio. 1 cart of enemy supplies is worth 20 of your own.
So you minimize the burden on your own people.
Right. You avoid emptying your own treasury, avoid causing shortages and high prices back home that make your own population suffer. His point is, if you have to fight, be smart about it. Make it quick, decisive, and sustainable for your side.
It's interesting then how he talks about motivation. He says you need to rouse your own troops, give them rewards for winning, but then captured enemies should be kindly treated and kept. How do those fit together? Seems contradictory.
It's all about what's useful strategically. Riling up your own troops gives them focus, and drive the rewards provide incentive. It's directed energy. Treating prisoners well isn't necessarily about being nice. It's practical. They can provide intelligence. They can be used for labor. Maybe some even join your side. It augments one's own strength without extra cost.
So even kindness is a strategic tool.
In his view, yes. Every action serves the ultimate goal. Let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. The leader carries that heavy weight, the arbiter of the people's fate.
Okay, so if quick victory is the aim, what about the idea of winning without fighting? That sounds like the ultimate goal. Chapter 3, Attack by Stratagem.
This is probably his most famous and maybe most profound concept. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Quote, "The best win isn't destroying the enemy, it's taking their country, their army, whole and intact. You achieve your objective without the immense cost and destruction of battle. Think diplomacy, psychological pressure, cutting off alliances, undermining their will to fight."
Like that business acquisition example, integrating smoothly, not destroying value.
Exactly. It preserves resources and sets you up better for the future. He even gives a hierarchy for how to approach this.
Right. What was that order again? Kind of surprising.
Yeah, the best thing is to balk the enemy's plans. Stop their strategy before it even gets going. Disrupt it at the source.
Anticipate and neutralize. Okay.
Second best. Prevent the junction of enemy forces. Keep them from uniting, isolate them. Divide and conquer, basically.
Makes sense.
Only third best is actually attacking their army in the field. direct confrontation.
And the worst.
Besieging walled cities. He says that's the lowest form of strategy. Hugely costly in time, lives, resources. You get bogged down. Avoid it if you possibly can.
So in that corporate example, balking plans might be like announcing your own product before theirs, spoiling their launch, rather than waiting and having a price war.
Precisely that kind of move. Shape the situation before the direct clash happens. He also gets really practical about force ratio.
Yeah, the numbers.
Right. 10 to 1. Surround them. 5 to 1. Attack. 2 to 1. Try to divide their forces. Equal strength. You can fight. Slightly weaker. Avoid. Much weaker. Run away.
Huh. Very pragmatic. No shame in retreating if the odds are bad.
None at all. It's about preserving your strength for a better opportunity. But it's not just about the general's moves. He warns that rulers or, CEOs, senior leaders, can really mess things up for the people on the ground.
How so? What are the pitfalls for leadership?
He lists 3 ways a ruler causes problems. 1,
Okay.
ordering troops forward or back when they can't physically do it. He calls it hobbling the army. Think of a boss demanding impossible targets without knowing the team's limits.
Yeah, unrealistic demands.
2, trying to run an army like you run a civilian government, ignoring the specific military realities. This causes restlessness, confusion, like micromanaging experts from afar.
Meddling without understanding.
And 3, appointing commanders or officers randomly, without understanding who's suited for what role or how to adapt. This shakes confidence, putting the wrong person on the wrong job. All these things, he says, lead to chaos, anarchy in the army, and basically throwing victory away.
So to avoid that, what does he say are the essentials for actually winning?
It comes down to 5 things, really. Knowing when to fight and when not to. Knowing how to use both large and small forces effectively. Having your whole team, top to bottom, share the same goal and spirit. Being prepared yourself while waiting for the enemy to be unprepared. And crucially, having a capable commander who's allowed to command without interference from above.
That last one feels huge. Trusting your commanders.
Absolutely. It's about clear goals, unified effort, readiness, and autonomy for the person executing the strategy.
And then comes that killer line. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Simple, but so deep. He adds those nuances too, right?
He does. If you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat. Half knowledge is dangerous.
Right.
If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Complete ignorance is fatal.
So how do you get that deep knowledge, especially of yourself, in a world that's always changing?
That's the constant work, isn't it? It means relentless self-assessment, brutal honesty about your strengths, weaknesses, resources, biases. And for the enemy or competitor or challenge, it means constant intelligence, observation, analysis. It requires humility, admitting what you don't know, and always learning. That complete knowledge is the foundation.
Okay, so you've done the planning, you know yourself, you know the enemy. How do you actually put this into action? Sun-Tzu talks about securing yourself first.
Yeah, this is key. Before you even think about attacking, you make yourself unbeatable. Security against defeat lies in our own hands, he says. You control your own defense, your own preparation, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. You make yourself secure, then you wait, patiently, watchfully, for the enemy to make a mistake, to expose a weakness. Then you strike.
So it's defense first, then opportunistic offense, not just charging in.
Exactly. The goal isn't just to win, but, as he says, to excel in winning with ease, making no mistakes. Ideally, you fight an enemy who is already defeated because of the situation you've created or the mistakes they've made. The smart strategist only fights after victory is basically assured.
That requires incredible discipline. And he talks about using direct and indirect methods. What's the difference there?
The direct method is the obvious move, the straightforward engagement. Think of a frontal assault or a standard business tactic. The indirect method is the surprise, the flanking maneuver, the unexpected offer, the subtle move that catches the opponent off guard. And he says you need both. Direct to engage, indirect to win.
He uses those amazing analogies for the indirect, right? Like nature unending, always changing.
Beautifully put, yeah. Indirect tactics are inexhaustible as heaven and earth, unending as the flow of rivers and streams. They're like the sun and moon, setting and rising again. He also compares them to basic elements, only 5 musical notes, but infinite melodies, only 5 primary colors, infinite pictures, 5 cardinal tastes, infinite flavors.
So a few core principles, but endless combinations.
Exactly. You combine the direct and indirect and constantly shifting ways to create an endless series of maneuvers that confuse and overwhelm the enemy. The key is timing and precision, like the well-timed swoop of a falcon.
And illusion plays a big part here too, pretending to be disorganized when you're disciplined.
Yes. Simulated disorder postulates perfect discipline. If you look chaotic but are actually highly organized, you can lure the enemy into a trap. Simulated fear postulates courage. Pretend to be scared to draw them in. Simulated weakness postulates strength. Make them underestimate you. It's all about controlling their perception.
So you're shaping their reality to your advantage.
And leveraging combined energy, not just individual effort, like rolling logs or stones downhill, using momentum in the situation itself. The clever fighter imposes his will on the enemy, doesn't let the enemy impose their will on him.
Which brings us to that water analogy again. How does that apply here?
Right. Military tactics are like unto water. Water flows downhill, avoids high places. So in strategy, you avoid what is strong and strike at what is weak. Go around the obstacles, hit the vulnerabilities.
Makes sense.
And crucially, water retains no constant shape. So warfare has no constant conditions. You can't just use the same playbook every time. The brilliant leader, the heaven-born captain, constantly adapts their tactics based on the specific opponent and situation. Fluidity is key.
That adaptability seems critical, especially when you consider the terrain, the actual environment. He gets really specific about that too, doesn't he?
Incredibly specific. Chapters 9 and 10 are full of practical advice. Camp high and sunny in mountains. Get far away from rivers after you cross them, or maybe attack when the enemy is only halfway across. Use level ground for maneuver. He attributes this kind of knowledge to the legendary Yellow Emperor.
But it's more than just physical positioning, right? It's linked to the well-being of your troops too.
Definitely. Camp on hard ground to avoid sickness. Stay out of swamps or dangerous spots. But also, try to lure your enemy into those bad spots while keeping your own forces safe and healthy. It's about using the environment strategically, both offensively and defensively.
So if we translate terrain metaphorically again, like to a market or project, what kinds of terrain does he identify?
He talks about 6 types in Chapter 10, like accessible ground, easy for both sides. You want to get the high ground there first. Entangling ground, easy to get into, hard to get out of if the enemy isn't prepared, you can smash them there. Temporizing ground, where neither side gains by moving there. First, he advises retreating to lure the enemy out, then attacking.
Okay, so different environments demand different tactics.
Exactly. Narrow passes, get there first and hold them strongly. Precipitous heights, occupy them first and wait for the enemy down below. Great distance from the enemy makes it hard to provoke a fight, disadvantageous to attack. It's all about understanding the specific landscape you're operating in.
But it's not just the landscape that can cause disaster. He brings it back to the leader's own faults. What are those calamities caused by the general?
He lists 6 calamities that are the general's fault, not nature's. Flight. Attacking a force 10 times your size. Just reckless overconfidence. Insubordination. When the soldiers are too strong or defiant and the officers too weak to control them.
Breakdown of discipline.
Collapse. The opposite officers, too harsh or strong, soldiers too weak or resentful. Ruin. When high officers are angry, ignore orders and fight on their own initiative out of spite.
Ego's getting in the way.
Disorganization. A weak general, vague orders, no clear roles, sloppy formations, just general incompetence. And rout. Misjudging the enemy, using weak troops against strong ones, no elite soldiers leading the charge. Basically, poor planning and assessment leading to collapse in battle.
These sound painfully familiar in organizational failures today, self-inflicted wounds.
Very much so. They highlight how leadership failure, internal weaknesses, can be just as devastating, if not more so, than external threats.
So what's the ideal general like, the one who avoids this and becomes the jewel of the kingdom?
This leader, Sun-Tzu says, aims only to protect the country and serve the ruler. They don't chase personal fame or fear disgrace for retreating when necessary. Crucially, they treat their soldiers like beloved children, sharing their hardships, which builds deep loyalty.
But not too soft, right?
Exactly. That care must be balanced with iron discipline and clear authority. If you just indulge them, he warns, they become like spoilt children, totally useless when things get tough. It's that blend of empathy and firmness.
And that leads to his expanded formula for victory.
Right. It's not just know yourself and the enemy. He adds, if you know heaven and know earth, You may make your victory complete. You need it all. Self-knowledge, enemy knowledge, and understanding the environment and timing. The whole picture.
Okay, that brings us to the final piece, the really hidden part. Intelligence. Chapter 13, Use of Spies. After all that talk about cost, this seems like a place where smart spending pays off big time.
Hugely. He argues that when armies are facing off and the whole war could be decided in one day, it's incredibly foolish, even inhumane, to stay ignorant about the enemy just because you don't want to spend 100 ounces of silver on spies and intelligence.
Penny wise, pound foolish, basically.
Exactly. That foreknowledge, knowing what the enemy is up to, is what allows great leaders to achieve things others can't. And he's very clear. You don't get this from praying to spirits or just, like, logical deduction.
So where does it come from?
Only from other men, from spies. And he breaks them down into 5 types. Local spies, using people who live in the enemy's area. Inward spies, recruiting officials or insiders on the enemy's side.
Getting people to turn.
Converted spies, turning the enemy spies to work for you. Doomed spies, deliberately giving your own spies false information, knowing they'll be caught and mislead the enemy. Then they're, well, doomed. And surviving spies, the ones who actually make it back with real news.
Wow, that's a complex network. Especially the doomed spies part, that's pretty ruthless. What's the thinking there?
It's pure pragmatism again. You sacrifice one agent to feed the enemy, crippling disinformation. It's a high-stakes deception tactic. When all 5 types are working together, he calls it the divine manipulation of the threads, the ultimate intelligence operation.
And handling these spies requires special skill.
Immense skill. He says you need the closest relationships with spies, reward them generously, and maintain absolute secrecy. The handler needs intuitive sagacity, fairness, and a really subtle ingenuity of mind. It's not a job for just anyone.
And the risks are enormous, too. If a spy leaks info early.
Death penalty. No messing around. It's incredibly high-stakes work. And he points out that the converted spy, the one you turn, is often the most valuable because they can help you recruit the others.
It really drives home that information is power. Knowing the enemy is everything.
So wrapping this all up, we've gone from grand strategy and planning, the costs of war, the ideal of winning without fighting, adapting to terrain, using deception, right down to the nitty-gritty of running spy networks. It's quite a comprehensive system.
It really is. The key themes keep coming back. Meticulous planning, understanding costs, the elegance of winning smartly, adaptability, the power of illusion, the absolute necessity of good intelligence and strong, wise leadership. So, thinking about all this, what's the takeaway for you listening right now? These ideas, they're not confined to ancient China or modern battlefields. How might you use these principles?
Yeah, think about it. When you're planning a project, negotiating a deal, even navigating a tricky personal situation, how often do those 5 constant factors, your moral law, your values, heaven, the context, earth, your resources, the commander, your own leadership, method and discipline, your plan, actually determine the outcome?
Or that need to really know yourself, your strengths, weaknesses, and understand the other side, the enemy or the challenge.
Exactly. Maybe ask yourself, what situation in my life right now could use a bit more Sun-Tzu style foreknowledge, a bit more strategic thinking, maybe even figuring out how to win without fighting? It's surprisingly applicable.
Definitely something to chew on. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the art of war. Hopefully these ancient strategies offer some fresh perspectives for whatever challenges you're facing.